All right, here we go. Starting the webinar.
All right, and I think we are live. Welcome everybody. This is Lullabot's Q&A, our live discussion about upgrading your site to Drupal 8 and what to Drupal 9 from Drupal 8 and what Drupal 8's end of life really means for you. So we will have a lot of time to do questions and answers from you, plus some that we've got saved up in our bank that have plagued us along the way. My name's Chris Albrecht. I am a senior technical project manager here at Lullabot. I'll be your host for this afternoon. And we have a panel of experts to answer all these questions for you. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Lullabot, we are a strategy design and Drupal development company, mainly working with government agencies, higher ed institutions, and enterprise organizations. Now, with me today to answer all of your Drupal 8 to 9 upgrade questions, I have front-end developer, Andy Blum, our support team manager, Cathy, and senior front-end developer, Mike Herchel. Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Andy. I'm a front-end developer with Lullabot. I live in Ohio. I'm a Aqua certified front-end specialist and do a lot of site building. I've done a couple of projects in Drupal 9 and happy to be here.
Excellent, thanks, Andy. Cathy, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Cathy Thayer. I'm support team manager. I work in the support department at Lullabot, and I live on the East Coast. And I've done I've done one Drupal 9 update myself, and the support department has done a few, and I'm currently in progress on some.
Excellent, thank you. Mike Herchel, tell us a little bit about you.
Hey, Chris. So I am a senior front-end developer. I live in Gainesville, Florida. I have 2 dogs and a kid. And yeah, I've been at Lullabot for 7 years. And I'm, yeah, that's about it. Ta-da.
Excellent. All right, well, we do have a Q&A section open in the Zoom chat. So if you have any questions about any of your sites, what it means to upgrade, where are the gotchas, what sort of modules are particularly nasty, anything like that, please go ahead, drop those questions into the chat and make sure that you've selected that the panelists can also receive those questions, and we will send them in. So to kick us off today, I would actually like to start off with a pretty basic question. Why November 2nd? Why is Drupal 8 coming to an end of life so abruptly? Anyone feel free to jump in on that one. Otherwise, I will pick you by name.
I volunteer Cathy.
Sure. So Drupal 8 has several dependencies, and one of them is on Symfony, and it's Symfony 3, and Symfony 3 is end of life at that same time. So so that Drupal doesn't have to custom roll security updates for an unsupported version of Symfony. Instead, we're end of lifing Drupal 8 and encouraging people to move to Drupal 9.
I see. So it largely depends on those libraries under the hood that we adopted in Drupal 8 now. We have to align ourselves with their life cycles as well.
Correct.
All right. Well, for people who are kind of stuck in that spot where November 2nd is coming up quickly, what does the end of life really mean for people who are still using Drupal 8 right now?
I can jump on that real quick. So end of life has this kind of abrupt notion to it that like it's going to be dead. Your code will still work. If you get to November, whatever the date is, 22nd, right? And that day passes and you haven't updated to Drupal 9, your code will still work. Your site won't just go offline. What end of life means is that there is no more security coverage for that code. And so since Symfony is dropping security coverage for their code, that part is no longer covered by Drupal security coverage. And so Drupal 8 will all be end of life. It won't be dead, but it won't be supported anymore.
I see. Okay, so if my website's running on Drupal 8, I've been trying to go through and get things patched up or Drupal 9 ready. It's not the end of the world if I'm not there when the support stops. It just means that my security updates will no longer be coming in. I still want to move to Drupal 9, but it's not a do or die date.
Right. Your site isn't going to go offline. That's not to say that, twiddle your thumbs and wait around for things to happen, because you don't want the security vulnerabilities that are there, but your site will still work.
Good to know. Good to know. Now, for those people who haven't gotten their sites up to Drupal 9 compliance yet, are there any sort of support systems out there outside of the regular Drupal coverage that can still either help to move your site or help to support your site if you're not up on Drupal 9? I remember this being a big topic when we went from 7 to 8, because that was such a major migration that there were other support services being offered to help those companies who couldn't make that jump that could support their sites. Do we know of anything like that that's going on to help keep those sites running?
So the Lullabot is a Drupal 7 extended support vendor, and Drupal 7's end of life is not till next year, and there are a group of companies who are approved Drupal 7 extended support vendors that are going to extend that out another 3 years. So if you have a Drupal 7 site, you can keep your Drupal 7 site for another 4 years and still get security updates. But things are different for Drupal 8. With Drupal 7, you build a whole new Drupal 8 site and you migrate to it. But for Drupal 8, you upgrade your Drupal 8 site to Drupal 9 while you're running your Drupal 8 site. So it's like the same site. And there's no extended support vendor program for Drupal 8. The Drupal community decided that that it was reasonable for people to upgrade from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9. And we can't really provide an extended support vendor because our dependencies are not supported either for Drupal 8. We mentioned the Symfony 3 end of life, but there are other ones too. So it's just not an option with Drupal 8, the way that the community decided to have those dependencies and want to keep pace with them. There's no extended support security releases going to come out for Drupal 8.
That's pretty interesting. So anyone on a Drupal 7 site technically could still be covered longer than you could with Drupal 8 due to those dependencies.
Correct.
Well, that sort of brings in another question. I think we all remember the pain of trying to upgrade our sites from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 because it was a complete rewrite under the hood for most things. We ended up bringing in a lot of those dependencies. We had to adopt our modules for those. Now, going from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 is not the same. It's largely just sort of a moving forward of that same code base. We're not rewriting these things under the hood. So what would prevent somebody from simply just going into their Drupal 8 site and saying, new info file for my modules, now I'm done? What would stop someone from moving up to Drupal 9 at this point? What would be those gotchas we would have to look out for? Mike, anything that you've seen on the front end side that might be kind of a tricky piece as we navigate into new themes, new dependencies that way?
To tell you the truth, like the front end is straightforward. It's easy. So between Drupal 8 and Drupal 9, Drupal migrated from Twig 1 to Twig 2. Twig is the rendering engine behind Drupal's markup. And there are a couple minor things, but honestly, it's like pretty straightforward where, Twig will throw the error, you Google the error and it says, replace this line of code with this line of code. And at that point, you're done. You know, so I feel like most of the work when upgrading the site between 8 and 9 is definitely on the back end. There's a good amount of deprecated code, and you know, it's not a matter of just changing your info files. It's a matter of like Drupal, changing from Drupal set method to like whatever object oriented pattern is there right now, you know, times whatever other deprecations are there.
Yeah, I've had some modules, some custom modules that my customers have had where the only thing I needed to do was add the compatibility line that says that this is compatible with both Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. But most things need to have a little bit of code updated, but the upgrade, the upgrade status and the and Drupal Rector tell you what that is. So if you run those contrib modules, it'll give you a report and tell you, I found this deprecated code in your custom module. Here is what you should change it to, which is really super helpful. So there are some changes to make, but usually they're kind of reasonable to do.
Can you walk us through like maybe a sample upgrade process? You know, let's say you have a new customer coming into you. What's your first step, and what do you look for?
Yeah, the first thing if I had access to like the code and getting the site to run locally, would be to do like a composer require to pull in the upgrade status and Rector modules and run the report, and then look at that report and have it tell me, oh, well, these contrib modules are a-okay. These other contrib modules have an update available. You should upgrade to them. There'll be a separate list of contrib modules that says there's no Drupal 9 compatible update. You should work with the maintainers of the module to try and get that ready. And it'll also analyze the custom code in the theme and in the custom modules. So I think that report is the first thing that I would try and do. Sometimes getting that to run is tricky due to dependencies with PHP unit or Drupal core dev. And if you run into those problems, I would say, you know, first thing, ask your coworkers, and then check the issue queues, and then check in Drupal Slack and try and get some help from other people that have run into the same problems that you've run into. It might be totally fine, but if you run into some trickiness, you know, definitely reach out for some help.
So we have a couple of questions that have been coming in along this line from Greg. Let's see, I've got two here. The first one, I'll just go in order because I think they're both tied together. What's the right thing to use to check for deprecated issues? Is it Drupal check? He says, I've been trying with that with the D option, the flag D option. Is that the right thing to do?
I might be the one to answer.
I think you might be the one to answer that one again, Cathy.
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats in the support department. So sometimes I lead projects, and sometimes I do PM, and sometimes I do back-end work. I haven't used Drupal check myself. I've been using the upgrade status module to do it, so I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. We could follow up though.
Absolutely. And then his question to follow up to that is upgrade status, and then what is the other one? Was there another tool that you had mentioned?
Drupal Rector.
Drupal Rector. Maybe while we're bouncing around between some other questions, we could pop that into the chat for everybody as well.
I just dropped it as a typed response to that question, a link to the project page for it.
Oh, thanks. Perfect. Thank you very much, Andy. There you go, Greg.
So is Drupal Rector the one that automatically will attempt to fix your code? Gotcha. So upgrade status will tell you what you need to change. And then Drupal Rector will go in there and try to do stuff, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And how effective is Drupal Rector? I mean, do you use that? Does it kind of do everything for you, or what are you thinking?
Was Drupal Rector the project behind going to all of the different modules and saying, hey, here's what you need to do to upgrade to Drupal 9? And it covered like 80% of all modules, 100%, because most of them were already good. They just said, hey, by the way, there's these deprecations and you need to add this to your info file. So Drupal Rector it has probably opened an issue on the module that you might need to update anyway. And if there's stuff in there that it couldn't handle, there could very well be patches in there that you could apply to have a module that may not have a Drupal 9 release, but to make it compatible with Drupal 9.
Yeah, and so when you run Rector, it'll tell you these things can be automatically fixed. And there are some like regexes and like PHP code analysis tools. It's very fancy, and there's a lot of like really cool syntax things involved. Palantir has put a lot of effort into improving that project to make everybody else's jobs of updating a lot easier for them. And some of the cases are like a simple search and replace that the computer can do automatically. There's even more complex ones that it tries to do, and it will make a best guess at. And when it puts the best guess in, it'll add an at to do to like check things when it's a little unsure. So it does give you a signal of what it's confident in that can be automatically replaced and what might need a human to look at. And then there's another set of cases, which is just like Drupal Rector's like, look, this is gonna be a problem, but we can't automatically fix this for you. And they might point to a change record, and like you can follow some pointers there. So the tool doesn't just automatically make its best guess. It like has different stages of things, and at each point, it's going to point you towards more information to help you solve that problem. So even if it doesn't fix your problems, it's a good tool to get pointed towards where you can find resources to fix them.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. This is a long way since those old 4.7 to 5 updates, and then we all know what happened after that. That's pretty amazing, some of these tools that'll do this now. So just to follow up on one other question that came in through the chat from Robert, he was asking what PHP version is required for D9, and this is in the regular chat for the webinar today. And the answer to that, Andy has posted in there for everybody. Drupal 9 requires at least PHP 7.3. 7.4 is also supported, but not required. PHP 8 is supported from Drupal 9.1.0. So if you're wondering about which version of PHP to use, Andy has all the answers for you there, plus some resources to go and look those up later as well. All right. I'll look for some more questions to come in here, but I have a few others as we go. And oh, here we go. One just popped in. So let's jump over to the questions. John says, he's asking, is Drupal module upgrader module something you or anyone else used or tried for contrib modules, upgrading, anything like that? Are you familiar with that one, Cathy? Drupal module upgrader appears to be the name of the module.
Just doing it like a quick Google of this. This looks like it's to update from Drupal 7 to 8.9, as opposed from 8 to 9. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but that's just what I'm seeing right there.
Yep. So that would be something. If we had some people on the panel who'd done other bigger migrations before, we may have used something like that, yeah, to go from 7 into the 8.9 realm. It's been a long time since I've been in the backend realm actually doing the code myself. I don't recall using that one. I'm not sure if that's a relatively new one. It's been a few years for me. But if there's anyone else out there Sorry, go ahead,
That
Cathy.
reminds me of something tangentially related, which is interesting, which is if you have a Drupal 7 site, you don't have to upgrade to Drupal 8. You can upgrade to Drupal 9 and skip
Really?
Drupal 8.
So
There's
Drupal 9 is just like Drupal 8 with deprecated code removed, right? So let me make that a little clearer. Drupal 8.9 with deprecated code removed. So between Drupal 8.0, Drupal 8.1, 8.2, etc., there's been a whole bunch of new features and new cool stuff going into Drupal, but after Drupal 8.8, the decision was made, we are going to, for the next release, we're not going to add new features. We're going to continue to deprecate code. And so between 8.9 and 9.0, like the feature set's exactly the same. It's just we remove that deprecated code, and then 9 is a little bit cleaner. You know, it doesn't have all that extra cruft in there, and it has those new dependencies.
right.
So if you're running Drupal 8.9, you're getting very close to 9.0.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you're running 8.4, you're going to find upgrading to Drupal 9 to have more steps involved. Because you can't go from an old version of Drupal 8, like 8.3, to Drupal 9. You need to upgrade your Drupal 8 site to the latest release first, and your contrib modules to their latest releases. And then after you do that to your Drupal 8 site and you get your Drupal 8 site up to date, then the upgrade to Drupal 9 can happen. And you'll find that to be like simpler because you would have already done most of the work. You'll have already done some of the work when you were getting your Drupal 8 site up to date.
So what are like some of the common blockers that you've seen, Cathy, for like doing the 8 to 9 update? Like, are there any specific modules, or are there any particular like issues that you've run into multiple times?
The thing that I run into multiple times is cruft around composer dependencies with like some related tools to Drupal. So like some build tools or testing tools, Drupal core dev or PHP unit, or like some of these like things that are tangentially related to Drupal that might require certain versions to keep working. But Drupal 9 wants some other versions to keep working, and like making that work together can involve some composer foo to like figure out like what do I have to remove first, and then how do I require it with no update, and then how do I tell it to update with dependencies. There's a lot of composer action happening, but I think the most problematic modules are the contrib modules who don't have active maintainers who are updating that module to Drupal 9. And so if you have modules that are not used by very many sites, then what to do about that module is a choice that you get to make. So one of the choices that you can make is, well, I'm going to update everything that I can. It's not November 2nd yet. It's still September. I'm just going to update everything I can right now and push that out to live and let my site work in Drupal 8, but a more up-to-date version of Drupal 8. And I won't exactly update to Drupal 9 yet. I'm going to wait a few weeks and see if there's a new release that comes out from my contrib module. So waiting and doing what you can is totally an okay option. The other option is find the issue, which may have been automatically opened by a bot that is using Drupal Rector and work in the issue queue on Drupal.org in that contrib module to help the maintainer get a release out that is Drupal 9 compatible. And the other option is, if you don't want to wait for that, or that seems not likely to happen, you can move that contrib module from contrib into a custom module. And then as an organization or an individual, you become responsible then for keeping that custom code up to date, as if it was a custom module that you had written yourself and was never shared with the community. So there's a lot of options, but I think one of the things that people will run into is finding that their site is using a contrib module that hasn't been updated to Drupal 9 yet.
All right.
One thing I would add in my experience from updating, and this was a small project, and so not even working in a side personal thing, was the site had been built in the early days of Drupal 8 and was using before Drupal had moved to the recommended project and legacy project composer templates. And so I forget what the previous templates were, but the difference in those templates, the old one didn't have a real clear upgrade path from that composer template into Drupal 9. And so that was kind of going in there under the hood and rewiring some things to say, hey, this is all still the same stuff. It's just a different composer project. I don't remember very clearly, and I'm not very big in the back end. I'm more of a front end developer, so I can't give super clear directions on how I did that or remember most of it. But that was an issue that I ran into, was the composer project templates being different.
Mm-hmm. We do have another question that goes through Composer that I want to get to here in just a second, but I'd like to add on to something that you were saying there, Cathy, because it's a change that just recently happened with the Drupal Association, the way they're handling Drupal.org projects that have been quote unquote abandoned or orphaned now. I actually just got an email the other day about my projects that I haven't worked on in a very long time because they're now obsolete. But to help solve this problem of those modules that have been abandoned by their maintainers, but people are still depending on to run their sites, if somebody else is more familiar with this recent change, please step in and correct me. I believe it's if you go 2 weeks without responding to their notice, then they will consider your project orphaned or abandoned and release you as the maintainer, allowing somebody else to come in and become the new maintainer, pick up the maintainership of that module and to run with it and keep it in the contrib space and keep it rolling. That way we don't end up with this sort of blockade of abandoned modules stopping people from upgrading. And I can see Andy furiously researching away on fact checking me over there.
Try to find you a link.
All right, and then with that, as we're getting some resources on that together, Greg has a question sort of around the Composer workflow. I've seen folks recommend using Composer to first start at core 9.0.0 and then update DB, and then stepping to the next version of core and repeat, working up to 9.2.6. Is this the right approach? If so, what versions would you step through?
I'm going to say, I don't think that should be the default where people start their process. I think it is reasonable to target the latest version of Drupal 9 as the version that you're going to upgrade your Drupal 8 site to. I think it would be rare that you would have a site that would require you to go to an early version of Drupal 9 and then run through the update hooks. You should be able to target the most recent version and update to that. And as part of your process, run the DB updates, and those should run sequentially in order and work. If you find yourself in a situation where that doesn't work, I think that would be unusual, but it could totally be a thing that happens. And so trying to do that would be like a second step, but I would recommend starting with targeting the most recent version of Drupal 9. If you run into problems, try and document those. Try going to an earlier version, see if that works for you. Maybe talk in the Drupal Slack in the support channel or the Drupal 9 readiness Slack channel. If you're not in Drupal Slack, you can get into the community Slack by going to drupal.org/Slack and then follow the instructions on that documentation page to get an invite. Once you get in the Slack, the support channel and the Drupal 9 readiness channel are good resources. And I think sharing your experience of being like, look, I tried to target the most recent version, but I ran into this particular problem will really help do two things. One, get you pointers on how to get around your problem. And two, like add a drop to the bucket in the community of, oh, people are running into this problem. People are running into this problem. Oh, somebody else ran into this problem. And then we can use that to like fix it and make it better and easier for other people that come later. So I think try and target the most recent version first. And then if you run into problems, document them and make an issue on Drupal.org or reach out in Slack and let people know that that didn't work for you.
Excellent advice. Thanks, Cathy. Greg also says thank you. Yes, the Drupal support Slack channel. Excellent place to get some tips on where to get by if you're getting stuck. All right. I'm going to jump back to my other list of questions here. So we've gone through how to get up onto Drupal 9. What are some of the big pitfalls? And it looks like Andy has some resources for us here about taking maintainership of an abandoned or unsupported project. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, that's not anything automated from Drupal. That's just if you would like to take ownership of a project that has been abandoned or that you believe has become abandoned, the process for taking over that.
Also good to know. Yeah. I'll have to go back and check my emails again and see what project they were specifying when I got that email. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here and blew the lid off something that I wasn't supposed to, but it did come from Drupal. It came from the Drupal Association. So I know it's something that they're at least pondering if it's not in place yet.
I mean, you wouldn't be the first person to be made maintainer of a project that nobody told you they made you a maintainer of. Once you're a maintainer of a project, sometimes you get added to some other ones. But I think this is actually going to end up being really good for the community. Is like, it's okay to have maintained a project for a period of time. You know, let's say 9 months or a year and a half, and then you've moved on and you don't want to do it anymore. That's totally okay. The Drupal community does not expect people to maintain things forever. And we're formalizing that as part of documenting like what it is to be a maintainer in Drupal, but offboarding your project and the Drupal community having a process to let somebody step down from being a maintainer and let somebody else step up is an okay and totally normal thing to happen. So it's all right. And when we get these milestones, you know, I think this is a milestone where it's like, hey, this module needs a release of Drupal 9. It's okay to say, you know what, I can't do that right now. And then somebody else can step in and have the opportunity to be a maintainer. Like, it's all right.
That's really great advice, Cathy. Yeah, it can be a very intimidating thing to have people start submitting issues to the project you thought would be fun to give back and then realize you don't have the time or it is a niche module for another project. So having someone else to come in and take that over, absolutely. All about the health status. Okay, we do have another question that's come in, this one from Dale. He asks, quite a few of our D8 projects were created before the core recommended method of installing with Composer came about. Would it be better to convert it, if possible, to use the recommended template, or is it safe to remain as is?
I'm a front ender venturing to guess that it's better to convert it. The one time where I had to mess around with Composer, I ended and it was the exact same situation where I was kind of running into a personal Drupal 8 site that was managed through Composer through like the previous GitHub hosted template. And what I ended up doing is I just went through the Composer requires and reset everything up under Drupal 8 before migrating it.
I think
Yeah, that would be my default, would be like, if you're in that situation, yeah, take a try at updating it and setting it up with the core recommended. That would be my first course of action.
And also something that else helps, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Cathy, is Composer 2, like Composer version 2.
Composer 2 is amazing, and you should totally do whatever you need to do to update to it, and it will make things better and faster.
So much faster.
+1 Composer 2.
All right.
I don't know if the rest of you had
That would be Composer 3, Cathy.
Composer 2 plus 1.
Get it? Sorry.
But all right, Andy, you were saying.
I used Composer 1 for a long time with the Prestissimo Composer project plugin globally installed, which made Composer 1 pretty quick, and Composer 2 still blows it out of the water. It is so much faster.
Okay. Well, I have a follow-up to that then. If I upgrade to Composer 2, I am assuming I have to upgrade my composer.json file. But then when I'm running Composer update, when am I supposed to take my nap during the day?
During database imports.
Ah, right. There we go.
But you don't have a database import between the 8 to 9 upgrade.
No, it's just when you're running Lando on a Mac, that's when you can take it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother question and topic in and of itself. But in all seriousness, though, if I go into Composer and I say, Composer self update or whatever that command is to update it to Composer version 2, do I need to do anything to my composer.json file in my Drupal instance, or is it all done magically under the hood for me? Is there anything I need to change?
You might run into issues. I seem to remember there being a key in the Composer JSON file, and there could also be a reference to it in the composer.lock file based on some other dependency. So if you start running into issues, you're going to want to start debugging that with Composer Y and Composer Why Not to figure out what's incompatible with Composer 2, and then why is that required, and start following the chain that way to figure out what's going on there.
My understanding is that it's really easy to roll back to Composer 1 if you are running Composer 2. So you can always try Composer 2, mess around. If something blows up and like catches your computer on fire, you can just back that up.
Yeah, I think as soon as you run Composer self update, it says, hey, by the way, this is broken. This is how you go backwards.
Yep.
Oh, very nice. That was very handy of them.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no other questions here listed in from the audience. So if there's anything out there that you all are interested in around Drupal 8, Drupal 9, what it means for your business, your site, technical questions, we have plenty of time left. Please send a few of those in.
Maybe we can talk about like some new features and stuff like that within like the later versions of Drupal 8, hopefully everybody in the audience, is familiar with Layout Builder, which was introduced in like, I think 8.6 or 8.5 or 8.6. And in 8. Somewhere around there introduced the media library. And one feature that I'm super happy about, I helped work with some coworkers to get this over the hump, is that within the menu system, you can create buttons now, which is really good for accessibility as opposed to just links and then treating them as buttons. And
this is
yeah.
in later versions of Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 only?
That button issue, I think, is in Drupal 8.9 only, and then Drupal 9.0 and above.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice feature. I'd love to know more about some of the accessibility features, and that this topic you brought up actually kind of leans me into what are people missing by not upgrading to Drupal 9 and hanging on to Drupal 8?
Security
What's coming
coverage.
into the new feature? Well, yeah, beyond the security coverage, right? There's your number one reason you should be focusing on getting up to Drupal 9. But beyond that, what are some of the new features that are built in or themes that are coming in with it that you might not get in Drupal 8.9 or a version of Drupal 8 that you will get when you move up to Drupal 9?
Yeah, so like the biggest thing is just the new admin theme called Claro. It's being worked on by a number of really excellent people, including our one of our coworkers, Christina Chumius. So Claro is still in both in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 in experimental status because there's some outstanding accessibility issues. However, I'm going to put a big asterisk on that. It's pretty much widely agreed to be more accessible than the default admin theme, which is called 7. And honestly, it looks a lot better too. So the reason why it is not yet marked stable in the default for Drupal 9 is because those accessibility issues exist, and the concern with the core committers is that if it's marked as stable, then they won't get fixed. So there's kind of like Drupal core has these gates that if you're introducing something as a feature into core, it needs to pass through, and like there's gates like performance and then another gate for accessibility. And the current admin theme became part of Drupal. This is back in Drupal 7 before those gates were put in place. So it's not yet accessible. So I highly recommend that everyone like start using Claro. Claro has some outstanding issues regarding like paragraphs. That is the like if your site relies heavily on paragraphs, you're going to want to kind of look into that. But outside of that, it's just straight up amazing.
And by outstanding, you don't mean super great.
Yeah, sorry. English is tricky. Like awesome, some awe, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, paragraphs should have some caution, but it is kind of an interesting thing, like when you think about the internals of how something gets integrated into core, that you could have a new thing that's marked experimental, which is actually kind of better than the thing that isn't marked experimental, but it indicates that it's like it's not up to the current standards, so it's just gonna get even better when it actually gets those things in. I think it's a good move.
Mm-hmm. Another new feature in Drupal 9, hopefully for 9.3, that Mike's not tooting his own horn about, is the new default not admin theme. Olivero is coming quite a long ways, and I believe Mike has a single blocking issue for 9.3.
There's like one blocking issue that once again is an accessibility issue. We're kind of waiting for some maintainer feedback on that, some accessibility maintainer feedback on it. And then there's a couple like we need to just like step through the issue or step through each browser just to make sure there's nothing outstanding and nothing left to do that. So there's some task type issues. But yeah, so Olivero is a new front end theme for Drupal core. And it is in experimental like right now, but honestly it's really awesome. That being said, like Olivero, like the default front end theme for Drupal core is, I feel like most Drupal sites have custom themes, you know, or maybe even like purchase themes, you know. So like one thing that we are one use case that we are targeting for Olivero is just like kind of a standard blog, you know, kind of similar to what people might use Bartik for, except it looks and it functions a lot better. But you know, so like if you're running a developer blog, it looks modern. It has you know, has support for code blocks and things like that. So Olivero's almost like, I consider it kind of like very similar to the out of the box initiative, because it provides that initial like wow factor. Say, hey, look, this is Drupal. This is something that, you know, Drupal looks awesome, you know. And when I say that, like look, it'll look amazing, as opposed to when you look at it with the default theme right now, which is called Bartik. Bartik was designed like over 10 years ago when Drupal Internet Explorer 8 was still the dominant browser. So Bartik looks a little old because it's old, you know. And yeah, I think that's one of the main features of Olivero.
So in those themes,
so if you have an existing site, it's you should be more excited about Claro.
So those two themes still in experimental mode while we're resolving those remaining accessibility issues. Once those are resolved and they are tagged as stable, it'll be some version of Drupal 9, looks like possibly 9.4. If there are people who are behind that, let's say still back on Drupal 8, they won't get the stable version of those themes, or will that code be backported into Drupal 8.9 or previous versions if you're still on Drupal 9.1, for example? Or will you need to go up to 9.4 to get the latest and greatest out of those themes?
You'll need to go up to the latest version of Drupal, and none of this like later work is going back into Drupal 8 at this point, you know. So even though Drupal 8 has versions of Claro and Olivero, those are older versions that do not have a lot of the fixes, a lot of the new features that the, you know, Claro and Olivero themes have.
And that's the case for not just core themes, but core modules as well. Any updates to anything included in core is currently being developed against 9.3, which hasn't been released yet, and is then being backported to 9.2. So current development is only for future coming releases.
Yeah. An example of that, and this is something I should have mentioned earlier, is core support for the WebP image format. So if you're not familiar with WebP is kind of a new type of image similar to like JPEGs or GIFs or PNGs. And it's really high quality. It's typically about like from a similar size JPEG, it's about half the size, and from a similar quality PNG, it's maybe like 1/10 the size, and it supports like transparency like PNG does. So Drupal 9 core has support for this, and it works wonderfully. And all browsers, well, most modern browsers support it. The exception is like an early version of Safari if you're not running Big Sur, because Safari is always a pain in the butt. And of course, Internet Explorer 8 doesn't, or Internet Explorer does not support it, but hopefully we're not supporting those.
Now, I believe Microsoft even announced that Internet Explorer is officially unsupported at this point. They're going strictly with Edge anymore. So fingers crossed. It'll be the new. I remember when I started in web development, it was IE6. Can we get rid of IE6, please? Back before tabbed browsing even existed. and I'm dating myself. Anyway, yeah, so more good reasons to consider accelerating your timeline to get up onto Drupal 9. And we do have a couple questions that have come in. Let's see. Oh, okay, a couple good ones here. I'm going to ask them in the reverse order that they came in. So Dale, don't worry, I'm coming back to you. And I hope I'm not mispronouncing people's names. Mihaela, looks like she has a question related to what you were just talking about, Mike. So I'm going to piggyback on that, and then we'll jump back to your question, Dale. She asked, which graphics software can be used to export into that new format? How do you create a WebP, Mike?
Well, in the Drupal world, you can just do it through image styles. You know, so like if you're browsing down through your Drupal admin menu and you go to create an image style, there's a convert option there, and at that point you can convert to WebP, and it works great. The caveat of that is like the PHP version has to be that's on the server has to support WebP, but it probably does. If you want to do this outside of Drupal, there's a really cool website and PWA app called Squoosh, and that's spelled SQOOCH. No, SH, and it's kind of like an open source PWA app developed by a couple people at Google, and it allows you to like kind of like zoom in, drag like a little line between the old version of the image and the new version of the image, and kind of see the difference, and then adjust various parameters and then export it. And I would also say that I know that. Like I don't have Photoshop installed, but like WebP's been around for over 5-6 years. So I would say that most major graphics programs can export into that. But yeah.
Excellent. And I was going to say, my researcher, Andy, is quick on the dial here. He's already got the link to it and the article that you wrote about it, Mike, in a chat for everybody. So there you go.
I'm a big fan of web performance, like making your websites faster, and I am a fan of that just because I am like the most impatient person I know, and I don't like slow websites.
A natural trait that really lends itself to your profession.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I hope that answers your question there, Mihaela. And then back to Dale. So we're going to just kind of jump back a little bit around feature sets, and here's the I think the elephant that's always in the room when we talk about Drupal feature sets is the wysiwyg of sorts. So Dale was asking, I think he was piggybacking on when we were talking about some of the new features like Layout Builder. We didn't use Layout Builder at all, but are trying to get into it now. I'm wondering how much we can mimic stuff that WordPress is doing with Gutenberg to make it more user-friendly for authors without having to install something like 50 modules to try and get there. So I'll summarize that question by asking, does anybody have any information about the future of editorial workflow in Drupal in terms of wysiwyg or page building, layout builder? What are we looking at in Drupal 9?
This is a whole rabbit hole of a topic.
We have 8 minutes, Mike. I think you can summarize.
Yeah, so I have thoughts on this, right? I have like so many thoughts. And Dale is right that like you install Layout Builder and you enable it, and it's not great out of the box. Like there's things that you have to adjust, and like, you know, the Layout Builder modal module is great, and then there's a number of like little weird things. For example, I opened up a core issue where the media library styling, like, you know, like let's say I open up a media library modal, but instead of on the admin theme, I'm on the front theme. That's not styled, you know, and you could totally launch that media library through Layout Builder. And there's a lot of little funky things like that that just make it, like, in my opinion, somewhat unfinished. And so we did a lot of work on Layout Builder early on. This is probably like 2 years ago with lullabot.com, and we even wrote a couple modules to kind of make things easier and to improve performance and things like that. But to tell you the truth, like, it needs, in my opinion, it needs a little bit of UX love, and I don't really know any way around it to make it as slick, at least out of the box. You know, like Lullabot has done a lot of work where, you know, we'll have a particular use case for a particular client, and we know exactly what they want, and we'll make that easy, and we'll make it very intuitive and things like that. But it takes work, and I think that's kind of the nature of Drupal in general. And I know that Dale mentions Gutenberg here. Gutenberg, there's a Gutenberg module for Drupal. Gutenberg's an open source project built on PHP, and it works with Drupal. That being said, the caveat is I haven't used it, and it's like one of those things I just want to get to, but I'm busy with other things.
I didn't know that. I thought Gutenberg was strictly a WordPress module, but that'd be fascinating. I'd be interested to hear if there's anyone out there who has used it, how it compares and how it holds up in a Drupal atmosphere. Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks.
I will say in the spirit of what this webinar is about with Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 is Lullabot. Layout Builder will only get better going forward in Drupal 9. It is what it is in Drupal 8. So if you don't like it in Drupal 8 and want it to be better, then you need to make sure you're upgrading to Drupal 9.
Yeah, another module that I want to throw out is Layout Builder Styles, which allows you to easily like attach CSS classes through the UI to various, sections or blocks within Layout Builder. And that could be useful, like say, like, I'm composing a page and I want to make the background of this of this section, blue, and the next one's going to be white, and I can select that through a drop down. And we've done similar things as that back on lullabot.com, where you're adding a section, you can say like, I want this heading and stuff. So there's a couple different ways out there to do that type of stuff.
Nice. This is fascinating for me, for someone who came from, I was a big panels proponent when I was doing back-end development and site building back in the 6 and 7 days. So to see this all kind of come around to where it is, we've made some leaps and bounds, and it sounds like Drupal 9 is just going to keep enhancing that. And if I remember correctly, there was an initiative, which DrupalCon was it? Because of the way things have been the last year, it's all sort of a mash of time in my head. I don't remember which one it was, but there was a Drupal initiative about improving the editorial experience, I think, through the wysiwyg. It's ringing a bell in my head watching the Dries note. So
yeah, there's
live.
been a lot. Do you remember even going from Drupal 6 to Drupal 7, there was a D7 UX initiative. And then for a while, Acquia had a distribution called Spark. Yes. And they were demoing things like I have a dog barking. They were demoing things like the quick edit and stuff like that.
Yeah. So more work to come, and it sounds like there is an emphasis on improving a lot of those things that have been those natural pain points that have arisen for us over the years. But with our last few minutes here, I have no more questions that have come in from the audience, but thank you to everyone who submitted questions. Hopefully we got you some satisfactory answers there. If not, I'll give you Mike's home address. You can go visit him down in Gainesville. So to wrap it all up today, I think we could probably summarize it by saying, if you're on Drupal 8 and not ready for Drupal 9 yet, it's okay, don't panic. You don't want to forget about it, but your site's not going to go offline. You will stop receiving the security updates, which is not good, but there are a lot of resources out there for everybody to help you get your modules in line, to get your site up to date, to be Drupal 9 ready, including some modules, it sounds like, that will actually do the work for you, which is pretty darn cool. And with that, I will also shamelessly plug the Lullabot support and maintenance department. We have, led by our own Cathy Thayer, a very talented group of people who would love to help you if you should need assistance in getting your website up to date and Drupal 9 ready.
Yeah, we do have an offering, which is a simple audit where we can run the upgrade status and the rector and produce a spreadsheet of items and make some recommendations. Like, we recommend you do these updates together, and then you do these updates together, and then you do these updates together. And that's like a little like scope contained where we can provide some advice without actually like having a big investment to accomplish all the tasks. So yeah, hit us up.
There we go. And in addition to that, of course, we have the lullabot.com blog, where our exceptionally talented developers and content writers and marketers and designers and everybody else has been contributing to what you need to know to get upgraded to Drupal 9, as well as a variety of other topics from project management on down. So check out the lullabot.com/blog for any more of those asynchronous resources. And with that, I'm going to go one more time around the horn. I want each one of you to tell me what you are most excited about moving to Drupal 9 for. I know we didn't rehearse this one. I'm throwing that at you curveball style. Mike, what do you got? What are you excited for in Drupal 9?
Claro, all the Claro stuff.
Excellent. Cathy?
Speed improvements. PHP upgrades probably going to happen. Composer 2 going to happen. Web performance things. Like everything is getting faster. It's really cool.
She is very excited about this. If you didn't know this. Andy?
The last step before Drupal 10 when we can drop support for IE.
Woohoo! Excellent. That's awesome. All right. And we have a couple people. Ellie is posted something into the chat as well with some more resources for everybody before you head out. So with that, I think we're at the top of the hour. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for the questions. Thanks to each one of our panelists for providing such insightful and thoughtful answers, and guest appearance by Mike's dog. And have a great rest of your week, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye.